Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm excited to have a look at this, the new Bolt Action Band of Brothers starter set from Warlord Games. This box contains the new Bolt Action 2nd edition rulebook. I was really surprised with how quickly this box arrived. I received it on the afternoon of September 20th, and I had been expecting it to arrive sometime next month. You know, due to the perils of living on a giant island in the middle of nowhere. Turns out I'm an idiot and missed the email saying my order had been dispatched earlier in the month. I was so excited to get this box and check out all the things within that I stopped working on the video I had initially planned for this week so I could put this video together. Okay, so on the front of the box, we can see there's some nice artwork of some Germans and Americans having a bit of a disagreement. The back of the box looks like this. It outlines all of the contents of the box, as a good box should. There's also a small image of both armies built and painted on a table fighting, an image of the included playsheet and rulebook cover. There's also a more detailed picture of just about everything included. Looking at the box is all well and good, but maybe we should actually look at the things inside. No? Okay. Thanks for watching. Farewell. I'm so funny. Okay, so the first thing in the top of the Band of Brothers box is the mini rulebook, and it's very book-like. This contains all the rules you need to play the game. Obviously, what with being a rulebook and all. This is a softcover book, so it's not as special, at least in my opinion, as a hardcover book, but it's still a very nice full-colour book. There are a lot of cool pictures of painted Bolt Action models and artwork in here. The only real problem I have with this rulebook is the fact that I won't be able to open it to a page and just leave it on the table. It'll snap shut. I have seen many people get their mini rulebooks for various other games ring-bound. I've never done that myself, but I have seen some people say that in the Bolt Action mini rulebooks, the text starts a little bit too close to the binding for ring binding to be practical without putting holes in the text. I'm still going to look into this, and if you know anything about getting books like this ring-bound, I would like to see your comments in the comments section below. So it's not as nice as a hardcover rulebook like the one that came with the Assault on Normandy box set, but it's still pretty good. The next item in the box is this quick start booklet thing. This is a really good addition to the starter set. It provides about 3 pages of historical information about the US Airborne. Interesting to read through. There's a page about the German Panzer Grenadiers, which I guess are a little bit less famous or something. There's also a page describing what's in this box, just in case you didn't see that on the box itself. Something I think is pretty good are these 2 pages. As the heading suggests, these will tell you how to assemble your forces. It outlines some units and tells you what kind of weapons each man should have in those units. Of course, you don't have to build your models in this way. More experienced players will probably have a few different ideas for unit compositions and such. This is something that would be really helpful for new players, who I suppose are kind of the primary target for a starter set like this. The booklet also runs you through a quick, small game and explains things like the order of play, turns, order dice, shooting, pinning, and all the other things you need to know to get started playing Bolt Action quickly. I guess that's why they call it a quick start booklet. There is also this section of errata. I don't quite know how to say that. I really like the wording they've used here. Instead of saying something like, there were errors in the first printing of the book, which is boring, they've blamed it on cowardly enemy saboteurs. That tickles me right in the sense of humour. It's nice that they've put this here, rather than waiting and publishing it elsewhere later, and the mistakes will be corrected in subsequent print runs. So I think if I do pick up a hardcover rulebook, I might wait until a later run. On the back of the booklet we find this playsheet that outlines how the game is played, and includes the tables and charts you will need to reference during the game. And there is a second playsheet on the piece of cardboard that separates the books from the models. There is also a couple of 10-inch rulers you can cut out if you're in need of some measuring devices. I quite like this. It turns a piece of cardboard that would otherwise become garbage into something useful. And now you have 2 playsheets, so you and your friend can both have one to reference as you play. Okay, so let's get to the models. Let's start with the most exciting part of the models, the bases. Yeah, bases. These are just some fairly standard Bolt Action bases with a straight lip around the edge, nothing too exciting. There is a single 60mm base included, onto which you can mount one US medium machine gun team. You could build more than one MMG team, but you would have to buy either more bases for them or mount them onto the 25mm bases. For the US Airborne included in this box, we get this leaflet, not so much as instructions, but as a guide to what's included on the sprue. And there's a couple of examples of built models. I noticed one of these descriptions mentions a set of decals including playing card symbols for the Airborne's helmet markings, but these are not included in the box. I contacted Warlord about this, and as I suspected, infantry decals are not included with the Band of Brothers starter set. They've simply used the same leaflet that will be included with the upcoming US Airborne box when that is released, which does make sense. Printing can be expensive. So if you are just looking for these paratroopers and the decals with none of the other stuff that comes in Band of Brothers, that would be the box for you. The rear of this leaflet has this army unit entry thing. We get 4 of these sprues, full of the new US paratrooper goodness. Each of these can be used to build 6 figures. There are 15 heads per sprue, so there's plenty of variety. Most of them have the helmets with netting. There are also a few helmets without. What I really like is that there's a couple that have mohawks. That's fucking punk rock. Okay, so maybe they're not punk rockers. Some paratroopers shaved their hair into mohawks and put war paint on their faces to be terrifying. And I think it's really cool to see that as an inclusion. All of the bodies are posed differently so you can get a good amount of variety in your squads. These are very nicely detailed and they've been moulded quite well. The mould lines are unfortunately a little bit heavy, but they're by no means the worst mould lines I've ever seen, and they should be easy enough to clean up. They are definitely heaviest on the bodies. The mould lines on the other bits are a little bit less pronounced. Unlike all of the other Warlord infantry models I've built previously, there are no separate weapon sprues included in this set. Instead, all of the guns came moulded onto arms. While I do like the separate sprue because it makes for a lot of possible variety and plenty of spare bits left over, having guns with arms moulded onto them does simplify assembly quite a bit. There are plenty of backpacks, equipment, and ammo pouches and things like that. One of the things I quite enjoy about this sprue is the messenger pigeon, right there next to that pistol in holster. It looks like it's wrapped up in something to keep it from flying away. I kind of wish there was one with its wings spread so I could build a figure tossing it up into the air to send a message. Still, it's a cool addition. My impression of these sprues is quite positive. Let's have a look at what's on the German side. Again, there's a leaflet for this set of German Grenadiers. It also mentions decals, which, like for the Americans, are not included in Band of Brothers. Only the actual German Grenadiers box gets decals. This is a bit different to the American one. The sprue part guide is still there, obviously. These sprues would be a bit confusing without that guide. The other side has a larger number of examples of the completed models, along with some descriptions of each model and how it's equipped. These look pretty good to me. There are 2 of these German sprues, and like the American ones, they can also be used to make 6 figures per sprue. There are only 10 heads on these sprues, but that's still plenty for a lot of variety. Most of them are helmeted, and none of them have mohawks, unsurprisingly. They do look pretty decent though. Just like the Airborne, these parts are nicely detailed, neatly cast, and as best I can tell, error-free. Though there are still mould lines, of course. These mould lines are less severe than those on the American sprue, but they're definitely still there. They'll be easily cleaned up though. These Grenadiers have a few arms and guns that are separate pieces, though most of them are either sets of guns moulded to right arms, or guns moulded into both left and right arms. There's also a good amount of equipment, backpacks and pouches, and stuff you can use to add a lot of variety and interest to your figures. There's also a single base on each sprue, making for a total of 39 25mm bases in this box, more than is needed, which I quite like. Sadly, there are no pigeons or other animal friends on the Grenadier sprue. In addition to these figures, the Germans get an SD KFZ 251/10 half-track with the Pak-36 gun mounted to it. This is obviously the instruction leaflet for that model. They are pretty clear and shouldn't be too hard to follow, though it would be nice if the parts had some kind of numbering or guide. For this vehicle, we get 3 sprues, as you can see here. The sprue on the right is for the Pak-36 gun, so it looks to me as though you could build this as the regular infantry carrying Hanomag. In my box set, these were the neatest sprues. They're all very nicely moulded, error-free, and the mould lines are barely noticeable. I think this model will build up very nicely indeed. There are a few extra details like some passengers, though they're probably not so useful for the Hanomag with the Pak-36. They'll still be nice to have in your bits box. You never know when you'll need some seated Germans. There's also a small amount of stowage. It would be nice if there was a little more included, but I'm not complaining. I like that on the gun sprue there's a figure. He's bent over and his arms are holding a shell ready to be loaded into the gun. That should help to make a nice dynamic looking model when it's all painted up. There is of course a decal sheet included for this half track. It has a reasonable amount of numbers, crosses, and number plates. And of course we can't forget the terrain piece that comes in this starter set. I do like that an actual building is included. I remember the Flames of War starter set just came with flat cardboard terrain, which is usable but not nearly as cool as an actual model. I must admit to being a tiny bit disappointed that I didn't get the other building that seems to have potentially come in this set. It was a wrecked house, and it looked to be more suitable for urban environments. There was a picture of it on the Warlord site and it looked pretty cool. I couldn't find it on its own in the store, but hopefully it becomes available someday. Anyway, the ruined farmhouse is quite nice. It is the same one that came in the Assault on Normandy starter set, so I do already have one of these. Good thing they can be built in quite a few different ways. The detail is quite nice. The mold lines are thoughtfully placed around the ends of the parts where they can easily be removed. The big, chunky details on this model make it look like it would be pretty easy and fun to paint up. So that's all the models. Let's look at the gaming aids. Anyone that's played Bolt Action before will be familiar with these orders dice. I'm not sure if the colours are consistent in each Band of Brothers box, but I got brown and grey, which I suppose makes sense for American and German armies. Though the colour of your order dice doesn't really matter in the game as long as they're different to your opponent. You also get 10 D6s, which is a nice addition to help you be able to play the game right out of the box. Though I do suspect most gamers have their own dice that they prefer to play with. I won't be using them because I prefer my pink sparkly dice. Veterans of Bolt Action might be less familiar with these. This sprue contains a lot of markers, but the more obvious item here is the template. This is to be used for high explosive weapons. It looks kind of interesting to me. It includes 4 different radii, 1, 2, 3, and 4 inches. For me, having them all in one template means there's a lot less potential for losing one small round template, which I find easy to do. There are also numbers on the larger ring, which I believe are to be used in conjunction with a D6 to determine the direction the template potentially scatters. The little tokens on the sprue are also kind of interesting. I don't think they're required at all, just a nice inclusion, and they do look like they could be quite helpful, and they're shaped like little dog tags, which I think is pretty cool. The very last page of the rulebook describes what these tokens are for. Most of these are hidden tokens. I'm not sure why such a large number of hidden tokens is needed. In addition to these, there are 5 "You men, snap to action" tokens that can be used to denote units that have been given an order by your HQ unit. There are 2 indirect fire tokens, 2 artillery barrage or airstrike tokens, 2 immobilized tokens, and 2 turret jammed tokens. And finally, we have this nice translucent red sprue. These are pin markers. You stick the jagged explodey bit into the top of the round base part, and it functions as a pointer to indicate the number of pins a unit has. Here's a quick tip I picked up from Beasts of War to improve these. There are raised numbers on the base part of these markers. If you carefully apply a light coloured paint to the top of the numbers, they become much easier to read at a distance. I used a light grey primer for this, because I figured primer would adhere to the plastic better and resist being rubbed off with handling better than plain acrylic paint would. This is a very simple thing to do and greatly improves these markers. Now they will be readable without shoving your face right down into the table. I quite like them. I think they'll save having to move a whole bunch of pin markers around with each unit. I guess so far this video has really just been an unboxing. Can't say I'm really a fan of just unboxings, so I'm going to quickly put together a couple of these models. I'm going to build some US airborne figures because they're new and exciting, and I've not built any Bolt Action US infantry on my channel before. The first I'll build is the medium machine gun team. These are some of the parts for the gunner. You can see there are definitely some fairly pronounced mold lines here. They're not the worst, but they are fairly obvious, so we'll have to clean those up first before going any further. Not the most exciting thing to watch, but it's an inescapable part of building plastic models, really. While removing the mold lines, I noticed this cool detail. The boots on the prone bodies have tread on them. These are normally just flat. Very nice. Before I begin gluing bits together, I drill a hole into the bottom of each model. In this case the torso, but it's usually the foot for standing figures. I will later insert a brass rod to assist with mounting the model to its base, and as a holder for painting so I can do that without having to touch the model. I then glue the prone leg on. I probably used a bit too much glue here, but it does look pretty decent, and I think the joins will be really hard to see once the model is painted. I like that there are two options for this prone leg, so your prone figures don't have to be nearly identical. This is good for the machine gun teams, which usually have two prone figures next to each other. Next, I glue the bipod onto the end of the 30 caliber machine gun, and glue that gun, arm, and bipod assembly to the torso. This goes on pretty neatly. I like to use the desk to help guide the positioning of this kind of weapon. The flat surface helps to inform the angle at which the arm should be glued on. This is why I glued the bipod to the gun earlier rather than later. Doing this will help prevent having a silly looking machine gunner holding his gun up in the air rather than using the bipod. Now he needs a left arm. I've chosen to use this one, and I think it is the correct one. There seems to be a little bit of a mislabeling on the sprue diagram for this. The left arm I've used is labelled as Part 14, BAR right arm. It's a left arm and it seems to fit with the 30 caliber gun. The other number 14 on the sprue is a BAR right arm with a BAR in it. I was a little confused by this at first. I guess with any new product there's going to be little bugs. Anyway, I glue the arm into place and it fits quite nicely. Because I'm a nincompoop, I didn't record actually gluing it on, but you can see how it looks here. There is of course a gap in the shoulder joints. These are pretty hard to avoid on models with arm joints like this. If you want to see how I take care of this, check out the most recent Herbert's quick tips by clicking the video you see on screen now. Next, I give the figure a backpack, which is simple enough, and an entrenching tool and other pouchy thing part. They don't sit perfectly for a prone position, but they look fine and fit better than the single backpack part that has all of these things in one piece. Next, the head could be glued on, but I prefer keeping them separate to make painting the fleshy parts easier, especially for models like this one where the head would be obscured quite a bit by things like guns. This is the head I'm going to use for this model anyway. I figured a mohawked machine gun team would look pretty cool, so the loader will get the other mohawked head from this sprue. That's who I'm building next using this pile of bits. Attaching the leg part is exactly the same as with the other prone figure. This time I have used the other leg. Looks pretty good if you ask me. I think these are the best detailed infantry figures Warlord have done yet. Next comes the right arm with the ammo belt that feeds into the Browning 30 cal. To get the positioning of this right, we can use the desk and the gunner we just built as guides. Adjust the fit of the part until it looks like the ammo is disappearing into the gun. Easy. Obviously, you have to build the gunner before the loader if you want to be able to do this. Now he needs a left arm. He is using this arm to prop himself up. So again, I use the work surface to help with the positioning of this part. It just wouldn't look right if it were noticeably up in the air. Next, I could glue the ammo box to the ammo belt, but it looks like it doesn't have a very large bonding surface, so I think a better option would be to leave this off and paint it separately. It'll make painting a bit easier too. I finish this loader off by adding the backpack and shovel bits and move on to the next figure. I'm going to build my American squads pretty much as the quick start guide suggests, so I'll need a few riflemen, and I'm going to put one of those together now. All but the prone figures have a single piece leg and torso section, so all we really have to do is select arms with their guns attached and glue them on. I've chosen to use this M1 Garand firing arm. Adjust it to an angle that looks sensible. I don't worry too much about the arm joints because I'll need to fill them in anyway, but obviously trying to minimize the gap is a good idea. Next comes the left arm. This time the correct arm to use is properly marked on the guide leaflet. Simply glue it on, put glue in the hand, and then twist it up so that it's holding the rifle. This is a lot quicker and easier to do on models like this where you don't have to fiddle about with the gun and its positioning. The gaps in the shoulders do look a bit poo, especially at the front, but that's easily fixed, and it otherwise looks convincingly like a man firing a rifle. Once again, I finish the figure by adding his equipment. There are a couple of additional pouches and other items that can be added, including that pigeon, but I prefer to leave those until I've built all of the figures, then I can decide which piece goes best on which model. I think that's enough figure assembly. I think this gives you a pretty good idea of how these models go together, and in my experience, most bolt-action plastic figures go together the same way, pretty easily. These are even easier than some of the older kits owing to the fact that all the guns have an arm already connected to them, so there's less fiddling to get the gun into a hand in a satisfactory way. It does of course reduce the versatility of those parts a little bit, and it makes my bits box feel a little sad, but I don't really see that as a huge drawback. These US Airborne Infantry are the nicest plastic infantry figures for bolt action that I've put together so far. I would also say they're the most nicely detailed. I really like them, and I'm tempted to actually eventually buy more when their standalone infantry box set is released. I haven't really had a great desire to field a US force in the game previously, but these are really good and so I feel compelled to use them. Good thing I've already got some tanks to go with them. I'm pleased I bought this box set. I think it's rather good. It's especially good for those that don't already have armies, as the words starter set would seem to imply. It's a good way to get into the game. You could even split it with a friend, so you could both get started in the game. And because this has a new rule set, I think it's also a good buy for experienced players, particularly those that don't have a lot of German or American models. My main army for bolt action is British, but now, combined with the figures from Assault on Normandy and this Band of Brothers set, I'll have a reasonable infantry force for my German army, which is predominantly made of tanks. Same goes for the Americans, I suppose. Now, the only problem I face before trying to field any of those armies is getting all the figures built and painted. This will take some time. Anyway, enough rambling. I really like this new starter set. I'm excited to play a game with the new rules and templates, though I have no idea when that might be. And the new US Airborne models are really nice. I hope you have enjoyed this look at the new bolt action Band of Brothers starter set by Warlord Games and found it useful. I will of course build the rest of the models in this box eventually, if not soon. I do have another new release from Warlord to put together, and you'll see that soon, but I'm also quite excited to put the half track together, so be sure to stick around for that. So what do you think? Did you order this box set too? Have you got it yet? Do you plan on getting it? I'd like to see any comments, questions or suggestions you have in the comment section below. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button to indicate this. If you thought it was garbage toilets, you'll find the thumbs down button right next to the thumbs up button. If you've not done so already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel to be notified of future videos. And if you feel so inclined, sharing my videos with anyone that might find them interesting or useful would be great. If you really like the videos I make, please consider helping to support the channel via Patreon at patreon.com/herbertherberderp. A pledge of any amount is definitely appreciated, though pledges of $10 or more per month will receive a personalised thank you card from me, Herbert Herberderp. All patrons get to see my videos a little bit early, so if that interests you, click the Patreon link on screen now or in the video description. I will be back again soon, so until then, happy modelling and thanks for watching. Farewell.